What is the meaning of life? Or is it what makes life meaningful? Are we affected by what we see in our past? Or by what we can't see in our future? Is anxiety and depression the cause? Or are they just the effects? Hey, hello everybody. My name is Ricardo Zulueta and I'm your host. Welcome to Thinking Out Loud Live. This show was made possible by Start Day One, which is a nonprofit foundation for mental health and suicide prevention with a more proactive approach in helping people rather than reactively waiting for mental health issues and suicidal tendencies. So today we're actually going to be talking about a grieving process. We have an awesome guest that specializes in this. Just from her experience, from getting out of it, from experiencing like multiple losses in a short period of time. And she's all the way from Canada coming to us live. So I want everyone to meet Martika. Hey, Martika, how are you? Oh no, you're muted.
Sorry.
There
Thank
you
you
go.
for having me. Oh my gosh.
All good. How are you?
I'm great. And you?
Good, not too bad. So I did a quick introduction, about who what we're going to be talking about. But if you could, can you just kind of give a quick story about, what you're experiencing, what we're going to be talking about, and then where you're at today?
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I became a grief counselor recently, based on my experiences, and then writing a book about, how I dealt with the loss of my mom and grandparents, and then an uncle, and then a father, and then my cousin died. It was like boom, 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 a bit of a domino effect with the deaths in the family. And so that took my life into another direction. I was really supposed to be a music rock star, but because of all the deaths that I had, I had to really deal with all of that. I couldn't just not deal with the loss and the pain, because I was suicidal after my mom died for several years. And then it wasn't until I took a few courses on the stages of death and grieving, and did a lot of soul searching, reading books, and inadvertently was, helping others grieve as well. And so after a lot of soul searching and asking spirit, how could I be of service to people? What do I know a lot about that I could help others? And death and loss just kept coming up. So here I am, teaching and helping people, with dealing with the grieving process and having fun with life again, enjoying life and creating relationships with your loved ones.
Well, it's actually surprisingly, this was coincidentally, this came at kind of at the right time because a friend of mine just actually recently just lost someone close to her. So, it's definitely a topic that I want to talk about. And also, I'm hoping a lot of people learn, because to me, and I'm sure you agree, that loss isn't just losing someone, it's just any kind of loss. Look what we're dealing with the pandemic. The loss of your kind of everyday life is completely gone. And when that type of thing happens and you have a completely different future and you can't kind of convince yourself to follow that blueprint, you go crazy and you get miserable, you get sad, you get depressed, because it's very, very traumatic, right? Explain to me a little bit more. What I like to do is I always try to get the audience to kind of go through your experience, right? Because I want them to know how you were feeling, what you were going through. So let's talk about all the shit that happened to you. Yeah, let's go through the shit that happened to you, because people are going to go like, yep, that's me. Oh, no way. So I want to go through like kind of what you were feeling, what you were thinking. So let's talk about the first one. What was the first one that happened?
Oh gosh. Well, my mom was the first one. I was 15. I just turned 15 years old, started my first year in high school, and we were really, really close. I mean, really close. And so her death, and she was my first death, you don't know anything about death really until it happens to you. They don't teach it in school. So when she
Yeah.
died, I was, in denial for a very, very long time because I didn't see her body. She had committed suicide, and
Oh,
she wanted to be cremated. That was one of the conversations that she had, about, when we talked about death. But so I didn't see her. So for the longest time, because I didn't see her body, I just thought, okay, maybe it was just a sick joke. Maybe she faked her own
yeah.
death to get away from a terrible marriage because my stepfather was very abusive. And I think that was her way out because she tried every
Yeah.
other way. And, taking her own life, I guess, in her situation was the only way out. And of course, for me,
Yeah.
I didn't understand how she was, what she was going through or how she was feeling. I just felt very abandoned and angry, and again,
Yeah.
a lot of denial.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. No, that
So,
makes sense. So
yeah.
that's the first, and you're 15 at this point.
Hmm.
Loss is it's very difficult to teach. You have to experience it, and that's why
Hmm.
to me, I don't like the idea of giving everyone a trophy when they're young, because
Hmm.
that's one of the first teachers of loss, right? Not getting what you wanted, things like that. I mean, death is probably the biggest loss, obviously, but
Hmm.
by kind of setting them up to feel those small losses, whether it's just a small game, trains them to handle loss a little bit better. And that's really one of the biggest things I don't like about everyone getting, trophies or medals or whatever it is that they do for kids. And because I think when you don't get that practice, the loss is going to be drastic and it's going to hurt 100 times more than if you had gotten a couple of losses along the way. That's why when you're much older, the
Hmm.
elderly can handle loss much easier than a
Oh, yeah,
kid can, because they're
yeah.
like, oh, this is my 50th one. Like, like
Well,
I'm
I
good. I
think
already know how to handle this. Yeah.
I think Ricardo, I think that's why it's good for kids to have a pet, because pets
Yeah.
die eventually, right? And even if
I
it's a turtle, like
agree.
a lot of parents are thinking, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to do that." But even if it's like a little turtle or I don't know, a hamster or something that involves responsibility, you're teaching them
Yeah.
responsibility, and you're also teaching them, okay, well,
Great
they don't
point.
last for very long. No, none of us last forever, and it's a part of
Yeah.
life. And then, it's sad for children, but trust me, I think they grow up to be a lot more sturdier and strong people.
Yeah, that's actually a
Mhm,
great point. That's a great point.
mhm,
And not only is it good for a loss, I love having pets teaches kids how to love
mhm.
also,
Oh, yeah.
because that's just a big thing. When they can't feel that and they don't know how to give it, it's the same thing as not getting it. At least I feel like it doesn't prepare them to, right? So now
Mhm.
you're 15. You just lost your mom to freaking suicide. So obviously at 15, you have 50 million questions, and they're all assumptions. You don't really know what the real story is. You have no clue.
Yeah.
Like why would happen?
Mhm.
And that's one of the craziest thing you can do, right? Is trying to go back and trying to figure it out, even though there's going to be zero answers for you. Like you're just trying to put things together, but it's almost impossible because then the person you need to ask is gone.
Mhm.
And just for people that don't know, I lost my brother to suicide, so I get the questions like, "What the?" Mine was a little bit more because I was a little bit older. I was 21 at the time. Had a better understanding of his experiences, so I was able to handle it a lot better, I think. So now you're at 15, you handled that. When's the next thing that happens to you? Like, did you handle it first? Did you go down and then while you were rising, another death happened? What happened?
Well, I moved with my aunt and uncle because my stepfather and I weren't, we didn't want to be together.
Yeah, that's
And
not about to
so
happen.
he was gonna be end up next to, I was not really happy with him, and so um, yeah, it was just a really trying time. Of course, I was a teenager, and so I was, into the partying and things like that. But I didn't get heavily involved into any of that
Yeah,
because I believe my mom was with me in spirit,
Yeah.
So, I
Right.
dabbled in a bit of, the marijuana and the alcohol, but that was about it. And it wasn't like a
Yeah.
daily thing. It was just, at a party, So
Okay.
I had a normal, I think, teenage life, and I had
Yeah.
an aunt and uncle that really, did a great job looking after me. But then after I
Yeah.
graduated high
Sounds
school
like
at
it.
18, I took off. I went back to the city and stayed with friends and, bounced around with different jobs. And I got my own place eventually when I was 20 years old. I got
Yeah.
my own apartment. I couldn't wait to have my own place.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then around that time, my uncle had passed. Already had lost a set of grandparents. And then my uncle had passed. And when he passed, I mean, I wasn't as close to him as I was with my mom, but he showed up in a
Yeah.
dream, which
Oh,
was
word.
interesting because in this in this dream, he was playing with others, like how children would play, like holding hands and skipping in a circle, that type of
Yeah.
play. And I remember the feeling of him being really happy.
Oh,
And I woke up from that thinking, wow, that felt real. And it put me in a state of being at peace with his
yeah.
loss. So
Yeah.
I didn't grieve him that much because I didn't have that, I didn't grow up with him, but still I felt at peace that I wasn't like, "Oh, what happened? Like, where is he? Why did God take, Uncle
Yeah.
Tom?" And it wasn't that kind of experience, but I noticed with every death, it was a different experience. It was a different grieving experience because every
Yeah. I was just about,
relationship is different.
I was going to ask you, why do you think, like, what's the biggest thing that is different? Is it just because of experience? Is it because of the type of bond that you had with each one? I guess
I
it's
think
probably all
it's
of the above.
I think it's all of the above, and also when you go through one death, not that it's saying it makes the second death easier, but you've already been through the shock and you've been through some of the anger and the
Yeah.
feelings, so it becomes a little bit more familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you do
Yeah.
something enough times, it becomes like, if you're working at a funeral home, it's no big deal to them, but
Yeah.
you
Right.
do something often enough or you experience something often enough, it becomes to be a little bit more, you can understand it because you've already asked all those questions.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is too, so one of the biggest things I tell people is that, what makes us sad or depressed is not really what we see in our past. It's what you actually can't see in your future.
Mhm,
And it's one of the things that kind of lets people understand that it's kind of like with your dream, right? Knowing like, oh, I think he's in a better place. So you almost feel better because you think, oh, the future is bright for him. So I feel good about that.
mhm,
It's when you can't seem to change your blueprint of your future that really messes people up. And I think one of the biggest things is the bond that you have with those people. People die every day, but then why
mhm,
don't you get that sad, right?
mhm,
Sometimes it's a family member, but you just weren't close to them, and you're just kind of like, oh, that sucks, like, oh, that's bad. I mean, obviously you're sad about it, but not as impactful. And I
mhm,
think one of the things, I think it's the bond that we build with them. And you know how sometimes it doesn't seem real until you tell someone, kind of like your experience with your mom. Did that really happen? Did,
mhm,
did that happen? Because I wasn't there. I didn't experience it. Like, I don't know if it's real. And so when something happens to you, it's not real until you tell someone else, right?
mhm, mhm,
And so when you lose someone, I feel that you lose that bond. It's almost the proof that certain experiences that you've had never happened.
mhm,
Because that person was the proof. Like, no, we went to this freaking park. I swear, like we went here, this, and then this girl did
mhm,
this, and it was crazy. And so once those things starts disappearing, you can never relive it again. You don't have proof, and you don't have a way to hang out with them again. And it really is hurtful. And I think that's the biggest thing that I feel that we experience when we have that type of loss. Um, so like I was saying before, so now when you're what, your uncle, so your mom, your grandparents, your uncle just passed away.
mhm.
Now what's the next one? And how
Um,
far apart are these experiences?
um, let's see, my mom died when I was 15, and then when I was 17, my grandmother died, and then I think I was 19 when my grandfather died, and then a year later, my uncle died in a car accident, and then I guess when I was 23. So they're all like a couple years apart, and then when my cousin died, there was a few more years had gone, and
Okay.
I thought I had gone over. I thought I had enough death, like boom, boom, boom. So
Yeah.
when my father died, I guess 20. I can't remember anyhow, but his death was the last death before my cousin Nikki, and she hung herself, and I was the
Yeah.
first one to find her, and then the other
Oh,
family members saw her there as well.
yeah.
So, but yeah, it was just boom, 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 and then Nikki's death, the last one was, I mean, it's jarring seeing somebody hanging there, right? And that
Yeah.
they're obviously dead because their face is blue. Although the first thought of my mind was to take her down,
Yeah.
like.
Of course.
And the second thought was, this is going to break her father's heart.
Yeah.
And then the third thought, and by the third thought, I was already out of the room and halfway up the stairs. That's how fast I moved. By
Yeah.
the third
Wow.
thought, I'm thinking, how come she got to commit suicide at 15 and I didn't? Because after my mom died, I did try and I couldn't. I was
Yeah.
some kind of force that prevented me from taking that step to 20 stories. But
Yeah.
I had a lot of questions. And so when you get angry with God or angry with life or angry with source energy, whatever you want to call it, that is actually a good thing. Somebody told me once, God loves it when we get angry. And
Hmm.
at first it didn't make any sense, but it rang true for me because there's something inside of you that's waking up.
Hmm.
You're questioning something, you're thinking.
Yeah.
So I just got really angry with God and I demanded answers. I wasn't even asking, I was demanding or commanding.
Yeah.
And then of course years later the book Having Fun with God was written. And uh, so and of course with that came a lot of healing. Most people I talk to about grieving process, how to grieve and ease the pain, writing is probably right up there with listening to music and exercise.
Yeah.
But writing is very powerful,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it
Definitely.
created, yeah, for me, a lot of healing and a lot of understanding. And it's amazing how when you're still and you look back and reflect upon a situation, how you can see it in a different light. And that saying, train your brain to see the good in every situation, really, really comes to light.
Yeah.
Because
One of
how could a death be a good thing, right?
Yeah, of course. One of the best advice that my brother gave to me. So this is more about the loss of a girlfriend, not just relationship wise, not like she passed away or anything.
Mhm.
But she said, "What? How did he say it? He said, you know, don't look for a reason. There doesn't have to be one." And I didn't understand at the time either. And I'm going like, what does he mean? Like, and what he meant was, doesn't matter what the answer is, you're still broken up. It's like, but you're creating creating this like turmoil in your head, trying to figure it out. But so what if you figured it out? What happens now, right? And he's just like, stop trying to look for a reason. Just know that it happens. That's what he said. Just
Mhm.
know that it happens. It's like it's not the only one that passed away today. It's not the only one that committed suicide today. It's not it's just like it's something that happens. But for you to try and figure it out, because the source that you need the answers from, you're never gonna get it. Because they're the only ones with the right answers.
Mhm.
Everything that you're gonna do are all assumptions. Every single one of it. Even when you think you found out, it's still an assumption because there's no kind of factor that determines that it's true or not anyway.
Mhm.
So, like I said before, this coincidentally that you're my guest, my friend just lost someone. And I believe, I haven't talked to her about this, but one of the biggest things that affect people, and I feel like they don't let go, is some sort of guilt. All right. Coulda, shoulda, woulda. Basically, it's
Mhm.
almost a regret. Basically, it's a regret guilt kind of combination, right? And I know that's what's going through her mind right now, definitely, without a doubt. And I hope one day, I hope she watches this. But the biggest thing I could freaking tell her is really just allowing herself to forgive herself, really, because that's
Mhm.
where regret comes from. It's just something that you never forgave yourself about. So, in your experience, was there, I mean, it seems like you're handling so many things. I feel like you never got through the grieving process because there's always a new one. And
Yeah.
now, almost when you're like kind of finishing off with this grief, there's a new grief to handle.
Mhm.
So, what were you going through? Was it just jumping back around? Were you like juggling? Like, all right, who do I feel bad for today? Like, is it going to
Mhm.
be my cousin or my uncle? Like, so what was going through your head?
Well, I guess why this was all happening, but with my grandparents, I knew that they were older. After my grandmother, she had an asthma attack, and then my grandfather died 2 years later because they were very close. He had lost the zest to live after she had passed.
Yeah,
But I guess what was going through my head was, okay, that death happened. The grandparents are gone, and I'm glad they were together. And I would feel my grandfather's spirit, and so I was I guess, at peace with that. I was easier to grieve my grandfather's death because I knew he was gonna go, and we had our talk,
yeah,
so he made it easier for me because he kind of felt bad for me. He made it easier for me to move on and to grieve his passing.
yeah,
But my uncle was a car accident, it was very sudden, and like I
yeah,
said, with that dream that made me feel better. But my father, I didn't know him very well, but I was looking for him because I wanted to bond with him and get to know him, and so that was a bit
yeah,
of a I didn't know whether to laugh or cry when I found out that he died because
right.
I was looking for him and somebody said, "Oh, we found him," but 2 days later,
Yeah,
yeah, he died 2 days ago, a cousin said, and
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So, it
So,
was just, these things happen and it just, I just didn't understand. I thought God was really didn't like me too much. You're
yeah,
trying to
of
do your life, you have dreams that you wanna do, and all of a sudden you're
course.
just overwhelmed by, this
Yeah,
loss. Yeah.
yeah. So, obviously, when it comes to grief, got to talk about the stages of grief, man,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
Um, everyone kind of learned this in high school. I'm hoping. Sometimes I bring it up, and a lot of people don't really understand. So, just want to kind of show people
mhm.
this. So, this is actually her website, grievewithease.com. And over here, you'll actually see what we're going to be talking about. So, let's go through it.
Mhm.
First
Alright.
stage. Let's go through the first stage. So, explain a little bit each stage, I guess.
Okay. The first stage is denial, and it doesn't mean that you're not aware of the death. You just can't believe that that person's not coming back. You
Yeah,
still are in shock. You're numb. You're in a numb state, and it's hard to think. Your brain is kind of foggy, and so it's good to have somebody there with you to help you with simple things like meal planning and going to bed and things like that if that person is really in a terrible state of shock. And then there's anger, and anger
yeah,
can come when you don't understand why the person has left. I was very angry when my mom left
yeah,
because we were close. I was trying to get her the help that she needed. I didn't think that was the only way out, and so I was very angry with her. Of course, you become angry with your family members for not helping, but
yeah,
people are dealing with their own things and they can only do so much, and plus they might not see
yeah,
where there's an issue.
yeah,
So again, that a lot of forgiveness is around these areas, like when you go through them, and then
yeah.
bargaining is when you kind of you're making a
Trying to make a
plea.
deal.
Yeah, you're making a deal with God, "Please take
Yep.
me instead, or I'll be a better person. I swear I'll,
Right.
devote my life to underprivileged children." And so you're trying to bargain your way out of the pain, out of the hurt, and,
Hmm.
yeah. And guilt, I included guilt in there, because that's a big one. I find with a
Yeah.
lot of suicides, yeah, guilt could
Yeah. It's
be.
funny because I just mentioned that, and I'm just like, oh, she's definitely at this. Like she's almost skipped everything else, and
Yeah,
went straight to the guilt, I
went
think.
straight.
And like what I've learned is that you typically jump around anyway until you go to the, all the way to the bottom. But in any case, go ahead, continue.
Yeah,
Talk about the
yeah,
guilt there.
yeah. Guilt. I found with the suicides, I felt that I could have prevented somehow, my mom's death and Nikki's death. Like I kind of sensed Nikki was suicidal. Just before she died, I would, spend some time with her and asking her, what does she want to be when she grows up? What are your interests? Because she was 15 and she
Yeah.
was, a typical teenager with that attitude. And and so she liked, the idea of modeling. And I said, well, I know a few people in the industry, well, not big names, but,
Yeah.
enough to get her going. I said, I can help
Yeah.
you out with that, get your photographs done. And she was not really interested at all in anything. And
Yeah.
I should have really picked up on that. But I realize now that when somebody's decided that they want to go, that is their choice. And
Mhm.
for somebody to kind of interfere with that, like, I can understand, but when
Yeah.
somebody's ready to go, it's their time.
Yeah, it's actually sometimes that's why a lot of people say like, I don't understand. He was so happy when I saw him the day
Mhm.
before. Well, that's because they've already decided. They're
Yeah,
just saying their goodbyes and they're not
yeah.
going to be angry at the goodbye. They're just going like everything's like this. It's kind
Mhm.
of like when you've decided you're going to leave a bad relationship, that dude is less annoying. That girl not going to freaking annoy me so much because it's just like, yeah, sure, man, because I'm out. I already decided I'm out. So a lot of those you don't even kind of go through. So that's like it sucks, but that's how people see it. As like, I don't know why I didn't see it. I didn't see the signs and this. It's like, because what are you gonna do? You looked happy
Mhm,
as hell. Those are your signs.
mhm,
And what I tell everyone all the time is like, stop waiting for signs. Like, why are you waiting for signs? And that's why you see teal everywhere on my thing here,
mhm,
because teal to us actually here, teal is our theme color because we made an acronym of what people can give to help prevent in mental health issues and suicidal tendencies. And basically, it's giving your time, effort, attention, and love. Teal is like your vegetables
mhm,
or your just a good diet, right? Because people um, are always waiting. It's kind of like telling kids, like, eat all the candy you want. I know how to look for symptoms of diabetes. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me because
mhm,
that's not what we do with kids. We tell them, like, hey, eat your vegetables. Stop eating don't eat all the candy for Halloween. Those are all proactive things. And if you're trying to prevent something, the only way to do it is proactively. There's no other way around it. You
mhm,
can't lose the weight without doing something proactive. If you keep
mhm,
eating the same thing and then doing nothing proactive, it's impossible. And so I always emphasize this. It's one of the biggest issues in mental health is because no one does anything proactive. And they're always just waiting and waiting. It's kind of like, well, let's go to the gym when you're 500 pounds. Like, you're
mhm,
good still. Like, I don't see any problems. There's no problems yet until the
mhm,
knee hurts, until you have heart conditions. It's like, well, why are you waiting for those to happen? And then we go to the gym?
mhm,
Okay. Everyone knows the best time to go to the gym is today. Even in
mhm,
your best fit. And today's the best day because why get less fit, right?
mhm,
And so that's a big thing that I've seen that is happening in the mental health industry is just everyone is just reactive the whole time. So anyway, let's go back to now we talked about guilt.
mhm.
We have depression.
And depression, yeah. Depression usually comes, when you start, it starts to sink in that the person is actually gone, and
Yeah.
now you're having a hard time just moving. Some people actually have physical symptoms of guilt, or not guilt, but depression, where
Depression.
they just
Yeah.
physically can't. I talked to one lady said that she got up and she took a shower and that's all she did, and she thought that was a win, like,
Yeah.
that was a good thing.
Yeah.
So, but just I like to say to people, just be with what you're experiencing, because we live in a culture that it's frowned upon to be unhappy or depressed. You try to shake people out of that as soon as you see them in the state, and I think it's better that they embrace it for
Yeah.
as you have to embrace, because what you resist persists. So just embrace it. I mean, if it takes a day, 2 days, and it could, you don't know how long it may take. Everybody's
Mhm.
different. So your depression could be a day, it could be a week, it could be a month, it could be a year.
Yep.
Hopefully not that long. But I
Right.
think if you embrace it and you're with it, and of course you do some writing, I think that that'll
Yeah.
help.
And then that's the thing. It's like, it's really the only problem is when you stay there. That's
Mhm.
the only problem.
Yeah.
And what I've seen that's been a problem, you hear depression out of all these things. You never hear about guilt or bargaining. You don't hear about any of these things. Everyone talks about depression, right? And like
Mhm.
you said, I don't know. I have no idea when depression became abnormal. There was this one lady talking to my wife. It's like, hey, sorry if I'm this and this today. It's just that I lost, I lost my this, so I'm going to be a little off. And then my wife was just like, yeah, you're supposed to be.
Mhm.
Like, you just lost your sister? Like, yeah, you're supposed to be. I don't, what do you want from me? I don't understand. Like,
Mhm.
so it's funny that it's becoming that thing, right? And depression, like you said too, like you can see physical symptoms and all that, but everyone that's watching, you got to remember, these are just the results.
Mhm.
You don't have the symptoms, and that's why you're depressed about the death. That's not what's happening here. But what sucks is this is what the doctors tell you. This is what the organizations tell you. This is what the
Mhm.
whole society tells you. Like, oh, Martika, I know why you're not getting out of bed. You have depression. When you have depression, that's what happens.
Mhm.
There's a pill for that. And to
Yeah.
me, what happens is like you're not allowing people to experience the grieving process
Mhm.
because the pill, alcohol, drugs, they're basically doing the same thing. It's kind of like postponing acceptance,
Yeah.
right? It's prolonging the pain. It's not fixing it. It's kind of like someone with a broken ankle. Yeah, I can give him a freaking shot that gets rid of the pain, and now he's walking around with it. I'm pretty sure it's not healing though, you know? And then once this wears off, it's going to hurt even more, especially when they start getting used to the drugs that I'm giving them. That's going to really hurt after this. And that's when they decide, I can't handle the pain anymore. And I think it's the same thing mentally. When you're always postponing, 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 because it was an artificial way of the grieving process. And you think you got to acceptance, but really you just kind of pushed depression to the side and said, I don't feel like feeling that. I don't really want to feel that. I think I'm just going to go ahead and do this real quick or drink this or pharmaceutical pills because
Mhm.
why are you taking all those? And it's because people are saying that the result is actually the cause, which is crazy to me. Like, oh, the reason you're so sad about your mom passing away is because, oh, you have depression. There's a chemical imbalance in your head. Oh, so it's not because I can't figure out why she did it. Oh, that's not it. Whew. Good thing there's that. It's and what happens is people suffer rather than struggle through it, right? Because suffering means there's zero hope. You just took away hope and telling people like, oh, there's nothing you can do about it. It's called
Mhm.
depression. It's worse than fucking cancer. It doesn't go away. That's what they
Mhm.
pick. That's what they get out of this, and it's crazy, and that's what really hurts people. So we're now at the last stage, and it's funny because depression. When people tell me this, when they say they're in depression, I say good. That's my response. Good,
Yeah.
because you're almost there,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Because that's the hardest fucking part, man. That is
Mhm.
the hardest part. And I tell people it's just like the marathon. Do you think the finish line is harder or the beginning? Which one do you think is harder? The
Yeah.
hardest one is at the finish line. When you go through school, do you think freshman year is the hardest? Or is it the final exams when you're about to graduate with your top classes, the
Mhm.
hardest classes ever? So which one is harder? So that's always the case all the time. It's always at that final thing. Like it's going to be the hardest thing. So when people are experiencing depression, to me, I'm like, awesome, good. And like Martika was saying, people have to realize, embrace the pain so that you can appreciate the pleasure or enjoy the pleasure. Because
Mhm.
until you do that, it is so difficult. You actually feel guilty for being happy.
Yeah.
Right?
Which is silly. Yeah. Yeah.
You're like,
So silly.
shouldn't I be sad? Like, I don't know
No,
what's
not
happening to me.
forever. Yeah. No.
And it's only because, so let's talk about the next stage,
Uh,
acceptance.
Acceptance. Yes, and acceptance is when you finally you've come to, I guess, at peace with their death.
Yeah,
You have a greater understanding, and you
yeah,
know that you know what has happened is was supposed to happen, and just to be able to move on and have, you know, not to be able to, you know, think fond memories of your loved one and not
yeah.
be depressed or angry in denial. That's when you're at that stage, when you're okay with the passing.
Yeah. And a lot of times, the more and more and more I always think about this, I'm like, what really helps us do that quicker? Because the goal is to get to acceptance as soon as possible.
Mhm,
Not force it, but
mhm,
that's the goal. And if you don't have that goal, you're never going to get there, like ever. Because
mhm,
if you want to stay in depression, it's so easy. You just decide to do it. It's so easy to stay in depression. It's so much. It's just like it's easy to be poor. Like it's so
mhm,
fucking easy. It's
mhm,
hard work to be a millionaire. So it's like, do I want to do that? It's better to make up excuses to say I'm poor though, and then I'll
mhm,
just get mad at you for it.
mhm,
And because when we're in a bad place, we tend to hate accountability and we love excuses.
mhm,
It happens to me. It happens to everyone. You're just in a bad mindset, and all of a sudden, it's Martika. It's not your fault ever, right?
yeah,
And because you're just in a bad place, like how could this be? It's because of this. It's not me at all, right? But to me, what really helps with the acceptance, I keep bringing it up because it's really something I've thought about so much that the future is really what affects you so much more than the past does. To me now, the past is really everything you have, kind of like bookkeeping for businesses, right?
mhm,
It's what you can learn from because
mhm,
the future is unpredictable.
mhm,
We should try to predict it though. One of the best ways to do that is being proactive.
mhm,
Proactivity is not just good for prevention, it's fucking awesome for prediction. Because I know if you stay in bed and not do shit and not think about the future and not think about your purpose or anything else, oh, guaranteed you'll stay in depression for a minute. Like you'll be there for a while
mhm,
until you decide, no, I think I have a different future. So one of the things that to me that helps people is seeing a different future. So when you have a loss, what I see is, well, a lot of times it's because it interrupts where you think you're going to be in the future. Like, what am I going to do? He's not here anymore. What's my future going to be like? Oh my God, like
mhm,
I can't shift, like what my future is going to be. It's like a breakup, right? You had
mhm,
this ingrained in your brain that you're going to have white picket fence, a dog, and kids with this person, and then you break up. You can't let that future go. And it's
mhm,
once you realize, like, oh, there are other people that I might find love again and all that stuff, that's the only time. And again, what I tell people is all about your perspective, right?
mhm,
It's always shifting. Now, death, loss, that's traumatic stuff. To
mhm,
me, trauma is kind of what prevents that. Trauma like makes you like fixed minded, right? You have a fixed mindset and you can't grow out of it because trauma almost makes you, because we're always growing or constantly changing.
mhm,
And when trauma hits you, it almost makes you like not change because you're like, yeah, but I like the person who I was before the freaking trauma. Like, can I go back to that version? Yeah, but you're not. Yeah, but I want to. Yeah, but it's impossible. Like the trauma, yeah, it hurt. It sucks, dude. Like, but you're a different person now. The thing is, you just got to learn from that,
yeah, it helps
and
you
that's
grow.
what. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So I'm curious. So the last step here, closure. Let's talk about that.
Closure. Yeah, closure is a step that I learned while watching a program called Beyond Chance about elephants that were unruly, and they hired a lady that knew how to talk to animals, and she spoke with the matriarch, and the matriarch was saying to her, "We lost one of our relatives
Mm-hmm.
of our elephant family, and the zookeepers took the body away before they could grieve over the body." So
Oh,
for them, they had to be able to see the body, grieve over the body in order for them to have closure.
mm-hmm.
That's the first time, Ricardo, I've ever heard of that step, that closure. And I
Yeah. This is the
realized,
first time I'm hearing this. in the
Yeah.
grieving process. I
Yes.
never actually heard this, so
Yeah. And I've added it because a lot of people haven't heard it, but this is my experience.
yeah,
Because I did not see my mother's body when she died, she was cremated way too fast before I could see her. And I was too
yeah,
young. I guess they didn't want to traumatize me further. But because I didn't see her body, that played um, a mental, emotional, I don't know how to word it, but because of that, I was still not in whole. I wasn't whole when it
yeah.
came to the
Basically,
grieving
you can't
process.
get the damn closure.
Well, when you don't see somebody's body, you can be in denial forever because you
Yeah,
need no proof. You know,
right.
how do I know she really died? And she could have
Yeah,
faked her own death, you know?
yeah.
Um, but when I saw Nikki's body hanging there, that was for me closure. In a weird
It's
way, the
right.
universe sent me that closure. I needed to
Mhm.
see. That's why I experienced it when I asked and when I commanded answers, I got them. I wanted
Yeah.
to know because that really messed me up. Like if you're going to, you know, you can only handle so much. Like a human person can only handle so much. And so
Mhm.
I was at a breaking point with spirit saying, you need to, because I was so angry with God. I tried to kill God. That's how angry I was.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Almost
I can't
did
even admitting that. But it's so
it.
true. It was so true. Like God had to go. Like, oh my God, it was terrible. And I realized in that moment, you can't kill energy. You know,
Mhm.
we've heard this before, but how many people have actually tried? Well,
Yeah.
you know, a few of us, right? So, but yeah, that's why I had to experience Nikki's death was because I didn't get to see my mom's body, and I would have been forever. I don't know what word you could use, you know, not whole because, you know, seeing and it was from an elephant, Ricardo. You know how many psychologists and counselors I went to growing up? Not one of
Mhm.
them asked me if I seen my mom's body. You know, not I don't think they were aware. It's not their fault. I don't think they were aware that that is very important to see the person's body
Mhm.
after they pass. It's
So
unpleasant.
what's the remedy for that then? If
Oh
because
my
you know you can't bring him back.
Well,
So
no, I do not know what the remedy for that is, and that's the
okay,
thing. Yeah. For me, I got
but that
lucky.
makes sense. That's what stayed. That's what made it stay longer for you. Is what you're saying
Yes.
basically.
Yes. Not
Gotcha.
seeing the body, not seeing her body. Yeah.
Right. Right. That
Mhm.
makes sense. I see. Yeah, that
Mhm.
can really kind of mess you up when you can't. Yeah, it's the closure. It's the only. I don't know what else to word that with, but
Yeah.
it's the closure. You need that. Like, yep, definitely happened.
Mhm.
And yeah, and you know that's the. It's almost like closure should be kind of above, right? Because acceptance is when you accepted the whole thing. It's like, ah, whatever.
Mhm.
Closure,
Mhm.
no closure.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's true.
Whatever.
Yeah. Well, the orders can be, I mean, everybody's different. Like some
Yeah,
people
you
go
jump
right
around.
yeah, you jump around. So I
Yeah,
figured
that's
closure
true.
would, yeah, you know, acceptance,
That's true.
closure. I kind of grouped
Yeah,
it the same.
and
Mhm.
yeah, and the thing is, for people that are watching, it's like, you know, you have to really understand that that's normal. You
Mhm.
can get to acceptance, and then all of a sudden, something might trigger it back to anger again. Like, son
Mhm.
of a bitch, and this, you know, you're like, it's because now you're like, this is affecting me now because of that crap that happened, or you got a new fact about your cousin, let's say, like that's what was happening.
Mhm.
Well, of course. Well, son of a, now I know what the reason is, and
Yeah.
you know things like that. And I get surprised sometimes because when people pass away, for example, drug overdose, a lot of people feel that guilt because they feel like they couldn't do anything
Mhm.
about it, right?
Mhm.
But it's not much that what you can do. It's really it's up to them, right? It's just that you don't know how to talk to them. But in any case, it's like first you got to get rid of that mindset of how do you see them? What's your perspective on it? It always comes down to perspective.
Mhm.
Do you see people doing drugs as just scumbags? People walking the earth and being just assholes or whatever? And I'm
Mhm.
telling you right now, there's not one person on earth that said, I cannot wait to be an asshole, right? Can't wait.
Mhm.
And there's not one dad that said, oh man, I cannot wait to abuse you. Like,
Mhm.
not one.
Mhm.
Um, so people don't need help because they're doing drugs. People don't need help because they're suicidal. They need help. That's why they're doing drugs. They need help. That's why they're suicidal. Until you have that perspective, you're always going to go, I don't get it. I don't know why she would do that.
Mhm.
She was so happy. Well, did you know anything about her at all? Because there's 50 million signs. When someone's being loud, when someone's putting on, crazy outfits, or you can just tell when someone's not happy. And I'm not saying you have to be all proper and stuff, because they're unhappy as hell too. But there are so many signs. The problem that clashes is people always say, we have to save people, Martika. We have to save them all. But then the same freaking people are saying, stop hanging out with negative people because you're going to bring yourself down. Guess who those negative people are? They're the ones with mental health issues. They're the ones that's not getting love at home. Because just like a bully, they didn't just come out of nowhere. They were treated like shit at home, and they're now picking on other kids. Because the bullies are not always the biggest kids, which should be the best bullies. Why are they not? Why not? They're the biggest ones in a class. Why are they not the one pushing everyone around? It's always a cause, a cause, right? So you have to remedy the cause, not the result. And every time this happens, I'm just like, you have to go to the cause. And so now I feel, people go through this guilt because they think, I could have done this. I should have done this. It's like, it's tough. it's tough because they only fix themselves. We don't do anything about that. So now let's go to the next part here, because I know we kind of talked about this too a little bit. When you're talking about the subject, it's like, to most people, it can take a toll, and it's almost like they don't want to talk about it.
No,
and drives me nuts because
so
I see,
taboo.
well, not only taboo, it's just embarrassment and shame is most of it. Not even taboo. Fuck taboo. It's mostly just shame and embarrassment. Some people refer to it as stigma. That's just another excuse. Beautiful excuse though. But it's just embarrassment and shame. For example, when people commit suicide or drug overdose, they don't like telling people. They don't tell anyone. Is it because, oh, that's taboo? It's like, so drugs is everywhere. What do you mean? Like, people are doing drugs all the time. Like, trust me, they are. I don't know how blinded you are, but he just happens to die from it. The question is like, why did he do that? Right? And it's always stems from something. They don't just end up doing that. There's a cause to it, but you're just looking at the result the whole time. So, when we're talking and they're talking about, this heavy subject, how have you been? Like, kind of coping with it, and we'll see. Yeah, what are you going through?
What do you mean, teaching this or?
Yeah, because people always kind of they don't really like talking about it. Death is like, oh, I don't want to ruin your day, Martika, like this and that. Like, let me just go over here. So not everyone's very comfortable at talking about it. I've become comfortable about it, but I'm curious what your mindset is on it.
Well, at first I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it because I thought, well, I don't want to be around grieving people all day. That was my first thought. But when I got quiet, I'm a spiritual person. I love talking to the spirit because that one knows and it's unbiased. So when I asked you, how could I serve? What could I do to help others based on my experiences? Death and loss kept coming up. So I finally surrendered to that. And you know what? It turns out it's not as bad as it seems. Most people that I'm talking to, at least on my podcast, or have already been through it and they've already overcome it. And now they're also sharing their experiences and how to help others. It's just like a platform for people to help others. I mostly I do talk a bit, but the guest does most of the talking, I find, which I love because I can only say so much about my experiences, and this is why I talk to different people, and it's wonderful talking to these people. And usually after the interview, I get a lot of support and encouragement, like, you're doing wonderful work. I'm so grateful for you. And really that makes my heart smile. It really
Yeah.
does. Like, it makes
Yeah.
me feel so good. I thought, that just that itself is payment for,
Yeah.
if I had any doubts, then that I don't anymore. And so
Yeah.
just the comments that I've been getting, and so if I can, help one person or save one life, then by sharing my experiences and what I know and how to overcome, not just, go through the grieving process, but actually thrive afterwards and have new
Yeah.
relationships with your loved one, because they're not dead. Can't kill energy. They become our guardian angels. And you can talk to them and pray to them and still have a relationship if you choose, if you're open to that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. It actually brings me back to my next thing. So, my advice for people, when they are trying to figure things out, or when they feel lost, or even, when they're feeling lost, grieving, you always got to go back to the source, right? Because what's causing that is your perspectives. Your
Mhm.
perspectives are often shifted by inspiration. And that's exactly what we're doing today. Because what inspiration does, it's just being exposed to it. You're not telling anyone to do something. They're
Mhm.
just being exposed to information. And that's what inspiration is. It's not the motivation is, I'm telling you, you got to do this. Come on, 10 more push-ups.
Mhm.
It's not, well, this is what I do. That's not motivation. That's more inspiration. People can't really tell the difference between inspiration and motivation. Inspiration becomes before your perspective shifts, and motivation comes after your decision. That's why people are annoying as hell when they try to motivate you before you even shifted your perspective, and they're
Mhm.
saying, Martika, come on, what do you mean? Let's go out. You broke up with him 2 months ago. Like, and you're going like, you're annoying, like you're
Mhm.
freaking annoying. It's because you're not ready. You
Mhm.
haven't said anything that made me shift my perspective that I should go out. And
Mhm.
so when you just go like, come on, you're awesome, you're beautiful, you're this, and when you do that to people, you're actually annoying as hell, because you have to change the perspective first, inspire them.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of what we're doing here. But before the perspectives, you have to know what's going to be a, a threat or a benefit to your
Mhm.
purpose. So that goes back like, well, so what the hell's your purpose? And because we have to go back all the way, because you're never going to fix yourself if your perspective is completely shot and if
Mhm.
you have no sense of purpose. So it
Mhm.
doesn't matter what you do afterwards, you're always going to make the wrong turns. It's kind of like being in a car and not knowing where the hell you're trying to go. It's like, well, why are you going there? Oh, I don't know. Oh,
Mhm.
you're probably not going to make it, because you'll find every excuse not to do it. Because if your reason is because my mom is sick, I'm pretty sure you might find a way to get there. If
Mhm.
your best friend is sick, or it's his birthday and you want to celebrate it and you haven't seen him in 10 years, that might make you go. But if you don't have that why, that purpose, you're probably less likely. And the beautiful thing about purpose is that it doesn't give a shit whether it's going to be a pleasurable ride or a painful one. And I think that's what's helped you out, because of your sense of purpose. And purpose is basically a verb that you do. It's well, there's two aspects of purpose. It has to be a verb, and it has to provide value and benefit other people, not yourself.
Mhm.
Once you do that, and it's not about you, you become happier with progress and all that stuff. And you don't focus in on the death of your family anymore. While you're talking about the deaths that you experience, you're just hoping you're shifting someone's perspective in front of your face,
Mhm.
because it's not about going through, because you're already at closure.
Yeah.
You're already at acceptance. It kind of goes back here and there when you have a bad day, but
Mhm.
that's normal, you know. And people are like trying to I don't know what it is. They're trying to make depression disappear. Like they don't want to ever feel that emotion ever again. But
Yeah.
it's just a result. It's almost like the warning signs. Your body is very efficient. It tells you like, oh, you're going through something. You need to cry that out. Like,
Mhm.
or else you're gonna keep it in. You're gonna be destroyed. You're not gonna win this one. Like, because you have to, your body's just efficient like that, anxiety, things like that, because we're trying, it's our survival instincts, you
Mhm.
know fear, things like that. It's just it's your mind is telling you like, yo, we need you to stay alive and something's off. So I'm going to do this to your body to give you signals like, yo, dude, something happened. I don't know what's out there, but you seem a little depressed. Might want to cry that out. Don't be that guy that holds it in. And so what is the kind of the first thing when you talk to someone? What are the things that you do? Because go ahead. Like, I just want to figure out like what's your what's your first thing?
Well, I basically ask about their loved one that passed. I ask them how it happened. I listen.
Yeah.
And then I would ask a series of of other questions. What helps you, because not everybody wants to, I guess, listen to music or write, but I find that the writing does help. But I basically let them know that wherever they're at, they're okay. They're okay with being okay, because sometimes people are, well, my relative died, but I'm not sad. Is something wrong with me? So they're concerned about these things. But whatever they're feeling, that's okay. And if they want to cry, just cry. Take the time to do that and embrace that, instead of other people trying to tell you what to do and how to do it. Because we live in a society where you're supposed to be happy and successful all the time, and that is not realistic. We all know that. You cannot know one without the other. It's called the law of polarity. So you're going to have a bad day in order to know a good day,
Yeah.
So, you cry it out. You do a lot of crying. After my mom died, I listened to a lot of Madonna and just cried and sang Madonna songs,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I'm going really back. I
So Madonna
I should have said Lizzo or something. Lizzo, and just cry it out.
That's great. That's great. That's funny. And all of a sudden, a different track goes on. I'm a virgin. Oh wait. That's funny. It's funny. Like it really is a lot of like listening, and when I always suggest that to people when they have someone that's in a really bad place, do not fucking motivate them. Don't do it. Just listen first. So I went through this with my wife. I was having a really bad day, and just telling her, everything sucked. I mean, everything sucked. And she just went, yeah, but you're awesome. You'll be fine. And I'm just like, I was feeling better. All of a sudden, I got pissed off again. I started feeling miserable again. And I'm going, babe, next time I do that, can you not behave the way you just did? I know you meant well. Like, of course, like she didn't mean to like make me feel like crap, but it did the reverse. And I'm still trying to figure that out. And then I figured it out later on. And I'm just like, so the reason we feel that way is it feels like you didn't listen to anything that I said. I just told you I'm miserable. I told you that this is happening and this and this. And he just kind of went like, yeah, but you're awesome. You're going to be great. And I'm just like, it feels like you didn't listen to anything I said though. And so I tell people, like, when someone's really bad like that, just listen to what they're saying to you. Because one, that's the information you need, because you cannot help anyone unless you know what the problem is. And it's not going to come from you. It's kind of like when you're selling something. You don't just go features, features, features. You talk about benefits, but until I know what your pain points are, how the hell am I going to know what benefits you? So until I ask you any, questions, you're not gonna think you want it, right? So I tell people, like, you have to just listen, ask questions, right? And when you listen, say, okay, like now what? Because now they go into a different mindset. Not typically on a loss. This is a little different story, but when they're just feeling miserable about different things, relationships, jobs, when you say now what, all of a sudden they get into a solution mindset rather than a why me, why is this happening, question, finding the reasons, all that stuff. And when you do that, all of a sudden you have to shut up, by the way. You can't even do suggestions. And they come up with the solutions on their own because it has to come from them. it's almost like no one likes to be told what to do. It's crazy.
No.
He's like, you can be the best, but if it doesn't come from you, it's not your idea. It's like, nope, not gonna do it, not gonna
Mhm.
do it. But so that's what it's good with inspiration. It's because it's indirect. You don't get in trouble. People are not gonna get in trouble if they don't listen to Martika today. So,
Mhm.
but they'll kind of listen in. Like, all right, so it's my choice. Okay, so I'll do that. Like I'll listen to that. Um, so tell me a little bit more about grievewithease.com and kind of how you work with people and things like that.
Okay, well, grievewiththese.com is meant for anyone who's grieving the loss of a loved one. And we try to work with you through the grieving process. That's where the stages are on the homepage to get you
Mm-hmm.
familiar with that there are stages.
Yeah.
And then we just use techniques like writing, exercise, music, and meditation to go through the different stages. I'm developing or designing a relief course. It'll be called Grief Relief. And
Nice.
going through the I call them the 5 steps, but they're based on the 7 stages. And,
Mm-hmm.
to use with anger and denial, for example, exercise.
Yeah.
Just to exercise it out, move your body, because you don't want anger sitting in your system, because that'll affect you physically. And next thing you know, you have, I don't know. I mean, everyone's different, but stress, when it's mental stress, it could affect you physically. And so, this
Oh,
one girl,
definitely.
I can't remember what it was physical. The grief was physical, but she had a hard time moving. I can't remember exactly where the pain was, but she had a hard time moving, and she knew that it was the grief. She lost her infant, and it was such a sad story. But
Yeah.
she moved through it, and now she's helping others that have lost infants. So she's a very brave woman. But
Oh.
yeah, just dealing with going through the writing. Writing has been a really good tool to use
Mm-hmm.
as far as letting it out, expressing yourself. Because again, the more you could let it out, those feelings out, the better. They're not inside
Yeah.
you, and then affecting you not just physically but emotionally too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
No, definitely it works both ways. When the physical can affect your mental, and your mental can actually definitely affect
Yeah.
your physical. And people don't realize how much it actually affects your physical.
Hmm.
Like they have no idea. Like there's this book, Mind Over Medicine, and there are just studies on it, and there's scientific proof that the mind can affect your
Hmm.
body. And
Hmm.
so it's not like, oh, that's just voodoo shit. Like, no, there's like science. They actually call it the placebo.
Hmm.
um so
Yeah.
for anyone that doesn't agree that it does happen, it's like you have to try and get rid of the word placebo then,
Hmm.
because it's what happens. They
Hmm.
can't explain it. They don't know how. And the only thing that explains it, and she actually went through the research, and she realized what it did. And what she did was look for the cause of things. People were ill and this and that. And what's funny is what was the helping them was getting rid of the cause, the stress, because their stress response was just like kicking in like crazy.
Hmm.
And so they would leave the job that they hate, leave a relationship, or let go of a loss, things like that. And then that's when they finally get better physically.
Hmm.
And it's crazy. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you talking about this stuff.
Hmm.
I mean, I know you talk about this all the time.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, definitely. And I hope anyone that's watching, hopefully they learned a little something today, and kind of how to go through the process, and that you have to, that it's
Hmm.
not abnormal to be depressed and this stuff. And if you guys saw, the beginning of this, Martika went through some shit. So,
Hmm.
and she's smiling today.
Hmm.
So when you can see that in your future, it's only going to help you out. So thank you again, Martika. I really appreciate you being here, and we'll keep in touch.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Of course.